The message arrived on a cold morning at the edge of human space. Taesung stood in his quarters aboard the diplomatic station, staring at the holographic seal floating above his desk. The royal crest of the Valeth Empire glowed with soft blue light, marking it as an official summons from the imperial court itself. He had known this day would come eventually. 5 years of silence could not last forever. Not when politics demanded answers and old debts required payment. Still, seeing that familiar symbol made his chest tighten with memories he had spent half a decade trying to bury. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Daehyun said from the doorway. The commander leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching his friend with knowing eyes. "Let me guess. It's from her." Taesung did not need to ask who. There was only one her that mattered, only one person in the entire galaxy whose silence had weighed on him like a stone. He nodded slowly, not trusting his voice. Daehyun walked into the room and peered at the hologram. His eyebrows rose when he read the formal language of the summons. "The princess requests your presence at Valeth Prime. Personal audience with the royal family. By order of Her Imperial Highness, Hannah herself." He whistled low. "That's not a request, brother. That's a command." "I know what it is," Taesung said quietly. "So why do you look like you want to run?" Daehyun pulled up a chair and sat down, his expression serious now. "You saved each other's lives during the war. You ended the fighting together. The whole galaxy knows the story of the human soldier and the alien princess who chose peace over victory. And then you vanished to the ascent of human territory and haven't spoken to her since?" Taesung turned away from the hologram and walked to the window. Outside, stars stretched in every direction, cold and distant. The diplomatic station Nexus 7 orbited a binary star system, and the twin suns cast strange shadows across the metal corridors. Hundreds of species lived and worked here, conducting the business of galactic politics. It should have been a place of hope, proof that different worlds could cooperate. Instead, it reminded him of everything humanity had lost. "The war ended 5 years ago," he said. "We signed the treaty. Humanity got to survive. The Valeth got their honor. Everyone won. Except you stayed away from the one person who actually understood us," Daehyun said. "The one alien who looked at humanity and saw something worth saving instead of primitives to be conquered or pitied." The memories came whether Taesung wanted them or not. Hannah's face when they had first met across a battlefield, her weapon raised, his own gun pointed at her heart. The shock in her eyes when he had lowered his weapon first and asked for parley instead of opening fire. The weeks they had spent trapped behind enemy lines, sharing rations and stories, learning that the other side was not so different after all. He remembered the moment they had discovered the weapon. Both sides had been building it in secret, a doomsday device that would crack planets and end civilizations. Neither government cared about peace anymore, only total victory. And Taesung and Hannah had made a choice that day. They had destroyed the weapon together, betrayed their own chains of command, and forced their leaders to the negotiating table. It should have made them heroes. Instead, it had made them dangerous. People who proved that individuals could change the course of history, that soldiers could refuse orders for a greater good. Both governments had praised them publicly while quietly pushing them aside. "I had my reasons," Taesung said finally. "Then you'll have to explain them to her." Daehyun stood up. "Because that's not just a summons from some alien princess. That's from Hannah, the woman who trusted you with her life, who believed you when you said humanity deserved a chance, and you've ignored her for 5 years." He paused at the door. "Whatever your reasons are, they better be good enough to say to her face." After Daehyun left, Taesung stood alone with the hologram. He could refuse the summons. Technically, he was outside Valeth jurisdiction. But refusing would be an insult, and insults led to tensions, and tensions led to the kind of problems that ended in gunfire. Humanity could not afford another war. They were still rebuilding from the last one. More than that, he owed her an answer. He knew that. The question was whether he could give it. The journey to Valeth Prime took 3 days through the jump gates. Taesung spent most of the time in his cabin reviewing files and reports he had memorized years ago. The Valeth Empire controlled 1/3 of the known galaxy. Their technology made human engineering look like children playing with blocks. Their cities floated on clouds, their ships moved faster than light without jump gates. Their military could crush human forces without breaking a sweat. That was the problem, really. Humanity had nothing the Valeth needed, and everything to gain from their generosity. It was not an equal partnership. It was charity, dressed up in diplomatic language. When his ship finally approached Valeth Prime, Taesung stood at the viewport and watched the planet grow larger. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to see. Continents of silver and gold, oceans that shimmered with bioluminescent life, an atmosphere that danced with colors Earth's sky had never known. The Sapphire Palace was visible even from orbit, a crystalline structure that caught the light of 3 moons and scattered, like a star. His escort met him at the docking bay. Valeth soldiers in formal armor, their faces hidden behind helmets that displayed no emotion. They treated him with perfect courtesy, which somehow felt worse than hostility would have. They led him through corridors that shifted and changed. Walls that displayed art from 1,000 worlds. Gardens that floated on platforms of anti-gravity. Everything was perfect. Everything was beautiful. Everything reminded him that humanity was so far behind. He was given quarters in the diplomatic wing. The rooms were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. A servant informed him that Princess Hannah would see him at the evening banquet. A formal state dinner in his honor. As if he were someone important, instead of a man who had been hiding for 5 years. Taesun stood alone in those perfect rooms and wondered what he would say when he finally saw her again. The truth was too harsh, too proud, too human. But lies had never worked between them. That was why he had stayed away. Because the only thing worse than the truth would be trying to pretend it did not exist. Outside his window, the sun was setting over the Valeth capital. The sky turned colors that had no names in human languages. And somewhere in this perfect palace, Hannah was waiting for answers he was not sure he could give. The banquet hall made Taesun feel small, and he hated that feeling. Crystal columns rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into artificial clouds. Tables carved from single pieces of stone floated in perfect circles around a central platform. Hundreds of Valeth nobles in their formal robes watched him enter, their faces showing polite interest and barely hidden contempt. He wore his human diplomatic uniform, simple and plain compared to their flowing garments. The other human diplomats were already seated at their assigned table. Ambassador Jiwoo gave him a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. She had made her expectations clear in a private meeting that afternoon. Secure favorable trade agreements. Use your connection with the princess. Make humanity look strong, not desperate. Taesun had nodded and said nothing. What could he say? That he had no connection to use? That the princess probably hated him after 5 years of silence? That humanity was desperate whether they admitted it or not? The herald announced his arrival in a voice that echoed through the hall. Taesung of Earth, honored guest of Her Imperial Highness, hero of the peace accords. The title felt like a weight around his neck. Hero, as if he had done something noble instead of just. Refusing to let millions die for political pride. Then she entered. And the entire hall fell silent. Hannah looked exactly as he remembered, and completely different at the same time. She wore armor instead of the flowing robes of the other nobles. Golden plates that caught the light and seemed to glow from within. Her hair was longer now, pulled back in the complex braids that marked her as a military commander. But her eyes were the same, dark and sharp and missing nothing. She looked at him across the hall, and for a moment the crowd disappeared. It was just the two of them again. Like those desperate days during the war, when survival depended on trust, and trust depended on truth. Then the moment passed. Hannah ascended to her seat at the high table, and the banquet began. The food was incredible and tasted like ash in Taesong's mouth. Course after course appeared, prepared by masters who had trained for decades. Wine that cost more than a human colony ship flowed freely. The Valeth nobles talked and laughed, discussing politics and art and philosophy. The human diplomats smiled and nodded, trying to look like they belonged. Taesung barely touched his food. He could feel Hannah's eyes on him throughout the meal, though she never looked directly at him. The weight of unasked questions pressed down like gravity. Ambassador Giwu leaned close during the fifth course. "You need to make contact," she whispered. "The princess has not acknowledged you directly. This is not good for our position." Maybe she has nothing to say to me," Taesung replied quietly. Then make her want to talk." "That's an order." After the meal, the nobles moved to the gardens for what the Valeth called the informal gathering, though it seemed highly formal to Taes. The gardens floated on platforms of anti-gravity, plants from 100 worlds growing in perfect harmony. Waterfalls flowed upward. Birds sang in colors instead of sounds. It was beautiful and alien and reminded him again of the vast gulf between their civilizations. He found a quiet corner near a fountain that somehow produced both fire and water. The Valeth nobles gave him a wide berth, content to let the strange humans stand alone. He was grateful for that, at least. "Still running away, I see." The voice came from behind him, soft but carrying an edge like a blade. Taesun closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his courage. Then turned. Hannah stood 3 paces away, close enough to speak privately, but far enough to retreat if needed. Her armor had been replaced by simpler robes, though she still wore a sword at her hip. Old habits from the war. Perhaps. Or maybe she no longer felt safe without a weapon close. "Your Highness," he said, inclining his head in the formal bow. "Don't!" Her voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare give me titles and formality. Not after everything. Not after you've disappeared for 5 years without a word. I sent my congratulations when you were promoted to commander of the 3rd Fleet. Formal message through official channels. Very diplomatic. Very cold." She stepped closer, and he could see the anger burning in her eyes. "We fought together. We bled together. We saved both our worlds from annihilation. And then you vanished like I meant nothing." He forced himself to meet her gaze. "You know that's not true, do I?" Hannah's hands clenched at her sides. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you used me during the war and abandoned me when you got what you wanted. Peace for humanity and to hell with anything else." The accusation stung because it was so close to the truth, even if she had the reasons wrong. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She moved closer still, close enough that he could see the hurt beneath her anger. "Explain it to me. Make me understand why you stayed away. After everything we survived together, everything we shared, why did you run?" Around them, the garden had grown quiet. Other nobles and diplomats pretended not to watch while hanging on every word. This was not the place for this conversation. But Hannah clearly did not care about propriety anymore. "It's complicated," Taesun said weakly. "I'm a military commander and a princess. I understand complicated. Try me." He wanted to tell her everything right then. The fear that had driven him away, the pride that would not let him stay, but the words stuck in his throat. How could he explain that staying near her would have destroyed everything he was trying to protect? "This isn't the place," he said instead. Something in Hannah's expression shifted. The anger faded, replaced by something worse. Disappointment. "You're still running. Even now, standing right in front of me, you're running." "Hannah, don't." She held up a hand. "I'll make this simple for you. Tomorrow, at sunset, come to the Hall of Echoes. It's a place where my people go when truth is required. You can't lie there, and I can't accept less than honesty. Come and give me a real answer. Or don't come, and we'll both know exactly what you are." She turned to leave, then paused. "I waited for you, you know. After the war ended, I thought you would come. I thought what we had meant something. I was a fool. You weren't," but she was already walking away, her robes flowing behind her like water. The nobles and diplomats slowly returned to their conversations, pretending they had not witnessed a princess publicly confronting a human diplomat. Taesun stood alone by the fountain. Feeling like the ground had opened beneath his feet, Ambassador Giwu appeared at his elbow, her face tight with anger. "What did you say to her?" She hissed. "Nothing. That's the problem. Fix this. Whatever personal drama you have with the princess, you cannot let it interfere with our mission here." Taesun looked at her, really looked at her. Jiwoo saw Hannah as a tool to be used, a connection to be exploited. She saw the Valeth as a resource to be tapped. She did not understand that some things could not be reduced to politics and trade agreements. "I'll handle it," he said. Back in his quarters that night, Taesoon stood at the window and watched the three moons rise over the capital. The Hall of Echoes, a place of truth, where lies became impossible and only honesty remained. He thought about Daehin's words from days ago. Your reasons better be good enough to say to her face, were they? Could he stand before Hannah and explain that he had stayed away because accepting her help, her friendship, her anything would have made humanity dependent on Valeth charity? That he needed his people to struggle and suffer and build themselves up from nothing because that was the only way they would stay human. It sounded insane even in his own head, prideful and stubborn and typically human, but it was the truth. And tomorrow, in the Hall of Echoes, the truth was all he would have. The Hall of Echoes sat at the heart of the Sapphire Palace, hidden from casual visitors and accessible only by invitation. Taesoon followed the silent guard through corridors that grew progressively simpler as they descended. The ornate decorations and floating gardens gave way to plain stone walls. The artificial lights faded, replaced by torches that burned with flames of different colors. The hall is sacred to our people, the guard said, breaking her silence for the first time. What is spoken there cannot be hidden. The walls remember truth and reject falsehood. Many Valeth refuse to enter, fearing what they might be forced to reveal, and humans. Taesoon asked, "You are the first human to be granted access." She stopped before a simple wooden door, so out of place in the crystal palace that it looked wrong. Princess Hannah waits inside. Remember that lies will bring you physical pain here. The hall knows. The guard left him standing alone before the door. Taesoon took a deep breath and pushed it open. The hall was smaller than he expected and completely empty. For stone walls, a floor of polished rock, and a ceiling open to the sky. Sunlight poured down in golden shafts. In the center of the room, Hannah stood with her back to him. Looking up at the sky, she wore the simple robes of a warrior, not the armor or formal dress. Her sword was gone. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman he had known during the war. The woman who had trusted him when trust should have been impossible. "You came," she said without turning around. "I wasn't sure you would. You asked me to." Taesong stepped into the hall and felt something shift in the air. A pressure, subtle but present, like standing in deep water. "You deserved an answer. 5 years too late." Hannah finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying, though her voice was steady. "Do you know what the hall does? It amplifies honesty, makes deception painful. The more you try to hide the truth, the worse it hurts." Your guard mentioned that. Good. Hannah moved closer, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. "Then you know you can't lie to me here. You can't hide behind diplomatic words or excuses. So I'll ask you again, and this time I want the real answer." She stopped an arm's length away. "Why did you stay away from me?" The pressure in the air increased. Taesoon felt it pressing against his chest, demanding honesty. He could try to deflect, to soften the truth with pretty words. But the hall would punish him for it, and Hannah deserved better anyway. "'Cause I couldn't let humanity become dependent on your mercy," he said. Hannah's eyes widened. Whatever answer she had expected, it was not that. "What?" The words started flowing now, years of buried thoughts breaking free. "Look around you, Hannah. Look at your empire. Your technology makes ours look like cave paintings. Your cities float on clouds while humans still struggle to build stable colonies. Your ships cross the galaxy in days while ours take months. Everything you have, everything you are, is so far beyond us that we can't even comprehend the gap. And that made you run from me?" Confusion and hurt warred in her expression. "It made me run from what we could have become." Taesoon forced himself to continue, even as the truth tore at him. "If I had stayed, if I had pursued what was between us, humanity would have taken the easy path. We would have relied on you. Your technology, your resources, your wisdom to rebuild from the war, would that have been so terrible?" Hannah asked quietly, "Yes." The word came out harsh and absolute. Because the moment we accept that another species is better than us, the moment we let someone else solve our problems, we stop being human. We become pets. Protected, provided for, and ultimately powerless. Hannah flinched like he had struck her. I would never. I know you wouldn't. Taesung stepped closer, needing her to understand. You would have helped us out of kindness and friendship. You would have shared your technology, opened trade, made our lives easier, and every gift would have been another nail in humanity's coffin. That's insane, Hannah said, but there was doubt in her voice now. Is it? Look at the other species in your empire. How many of them are truly independent? How many build their own ships, develop their own technology, chart their own course? Or do they all depend on Valith infrastructure, Valith trade, Valith protection? The hall seemed to hum with his words, amplifying them, confirming their truth. Hannah was quiet for a long moment, her expression troubled. My people needed to suffer, Taesung continued, softer now. We needed to struggle, to fail, to rebuild with our own bloodied hands, because that's all we have. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. Not the smartest, not the most advanced. But we're the ones who refuse to stay down. That's our only advantage, our only claim to being equals instead of subjects. So you stayed away to preserve human pride. Hannah's voice had an edge now. You chose stubbornness over connection. I chose humanity's future over my own happiness. Admission hurt worse than any physical pain the hall could inflict. Every day for 5 years, I wanted to send you a message, to hear your voice, to see your face, but I knew if I opened that door even a crack, I wouldn't be able to close it. And humanity would suffer for my weakness. Hannah was quiet for a long time, processing his words. The sunlight shifted as the planet turned, casting new shadows across the floor. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You really believe that? That accepting help would have destroyed your species? I know it would have. I've studied history, Hannah. Human history is full of proud civilizations that accepted help from stronger powers, and every single one of them ceased to exist as independent peoples. They were absorbed, integrated, made into shadows of what they once were. We're not conquerors, Hannah protested. No, you're worse. Taesun saw her flinch but pushed on. Conquerors can be fought, but kindness? Generosity? How do you resist someone who only wants to help? How do you maintain your identity when accepting aid is the rational choice? The hall pulsed with the truth of his words, and Hannah closed her eyes as if in pain. When she opened them again, they were full of tears. So I meant nothing to you. Just a political problem to be avoided. No, the word came out fierce and immediate. The hall rang like a bell, confirming his honesty. You meant everything. That was the problem. If you had meant nothing, staying away would have been easy. Hannah looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Then you're a fool. You threw away 5 years because of pride and fear. Yes, Taesung agreed. Very human of me. She laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. I hate that you're right. I hate that I understand your reasoning. I hate that I can't even argue against it without proving your point. I'm sorry, he said, meaning it. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I disappeared. But I'm not sorry for the choice I made. Hannah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so simple and human it made Taesung's chest ache. You want to know something ironic? I stayed away for the same reason. It was Taesung's turn to be shocked. What? After you left, I thought about following you. About using my position to force contact, to demand explanations. My mother would have supported me. The council would have approved strengthening ties with humanity. Hannah's voice was steady now, though tears still fell. But I didn't, because I realized what it would look like. A Valeth princess pursuing a human diplomat. The power imbalance was too great. Anything between us would have been seen as conquest, dressed as romance. The hall hummed with the truth of her words. Taesun felt something break open in his chest. I stayed away to protect you, Hannah continued. To protect your people's dignity, because I understood that humanity needed space to grow, not the shadow of the Empire hanging over you. She met his eyes. So maybe I understand stubbornness better than you think. Maybe it's not just a human trait. They stood facing each other in the Hall of Echoes, two people who had chosen duty over desire, who had suffered in silence to protect something larger than themselves. And for the first time in 5 years, Taesoon felt the weight begin to lift. We're both fools, he said. Agreed. Hannah stepped closer and reached out, hesitating before taking his hand. But at least we're honest fools. The hall sang with truth. The alarm shattered the moment like glass. Hannah's hand went instinctively to where her sword should have been, finding only empty air. Taesoon spun toward the door as it burst open, revealing a Valeth guard with fear written across his face. Your Highness, we have an emergency. The Joint Research Station at Kepler 9 has gone dark. All communications ceased 3 hours ago. Hannah's expression shifted instantly from vulnerable to commander. What was the last transmission? A distress signal. Brief. No details. The guard glanced at Taesoon nervously. Both human and Valeth staff were on board. 47 personnel total. Taesong felt his stomach drop. Kepler 9 was supposed to be a symbol of cooperation. A research station where both species worked together on peaceful scientific projects. If something had happened there, it could destroy the fragile peace they had fought so hard to build. I need to go, Hannah said, already moving toward the door. She paused and looked back at Taesong. This conversation isn't over. I'm coming with you, he said. This is Valeth military business. Half those personnel are human. That makes it my business too. They argued for exactly 10 seconds before Hannah nodded sharply. Together they ran through the palace corridors, the guards struggling to keep pace. Other guards joined them, and by the time they reached the command center, Hannah had a full security detail. The command center was chaos. Holographic displays showed the last known position of the station, frozen in space and silent. Valeth officers shouted reports, while human diplomats demanded information. Ambassador Ji Woo stood near the center, her face pale. What do we know? Hannah demanded. A Valeth officer turned, relief flooding his features at seeing the princess. Limited information, Your Highness. The station stopped responding 3 hours ago. We sent a probe, but it was destroyed before it could transmit data. Destroyed? Taesong pushed forward. By what? Unknown. The probe lasted exactly 4 seconds before losing contact. Hannah pulled up the station schematics on the main display. Show me the last transmission. The audio crackled through the speakers. A human voice, distorted by interference. Under attack, not an accident, they knew, then static. Taesong looked at Hannah. Who would attack a research station? Before anyone could answer, a new alert sounded. Another officer called out, Your Highness, we're receiving a message. It's from the attackers. The display shifted to show a figure in a hooded robe. The voice was distorted, impossible to identify as human or Valeth. The research station has been destroyed as a warning. The peace between your species is a lie built on weakness. We will not allow it to continue. The message ended abruptly. The command center fell silent. Ambassador Ji Woo broke the silence first. This is an act of war. The Valeth must respond. We don't know who attacked, Hannah interrupted. Making assumptions now would be exactly what they want. Then what do you suggest? Ji Woo's voice dripped with barely controlled anger. We sit here while our people are murdered. Taesoon studied the message, something nagging at his mind. The transmission had been too clean, too carefully constructed. Whoever made it wanted a specific response. This is a setup. They want us to blame each other. Of course you'd say that, a new voice called out. Taesong turned to see a Valeth general pushing through the crowd. His nameplate read General Koltar, and his expression showed open hostility. The human wants to protect his people by casting doubt. I want to find the truth, Taesoon shot back. The truth is that human extremists have attacked a Valeth-protected station, Koltar said. The evidence is clear. What evidence? Hannah demanded. All we have is a distress call and a message from an unknown source. Exactly, Koltar said. Unknown to you, perhaps? but my intelligence service has been tracking human extremist groups who oppose the peace. Groups funded by corporations that profit from conflict. Ambassador Jiwoo's face went red. That's a baseless accusation, is it? Coulter pulled up new data on the display. We've intercepted communications from a human corporation called Daeon Industries. They've been funneling money to anti-Valith groups for months. Tae-sung felt his blood run cold. He knew that name. Daeon Industries was run by a man called Yoon-ho, a corporate director who had made billions during the war and lost everything when peace was declared. Even if that's true, Hannah said carefully, it doesn't prove they attacked the station. Then, let me present this. Coulter displayed another file. One of the station's human staff members, a scientist named Dong Min, had ties to these same extremist groups. He was on duty when the station went dark. Implication was clear. The Valith were building a case that humans had sabotaged the station from within. Ambassador Giwoo looked ready to explode, but before she could speak, one of the human officers approached Tae-sung. It was Dae-hi, his face grim. We need to talk. Privately. Tae-sun followed him to a side room. Hannah noticed and joined them, leaving the arguing diplomats behind. What do you know? Tae-sung asked. Dae-hyun pulled out a datapad. I've been doing some checking since you got the summons to come here. Something felt wrong about the timing. And I found something. He displayed financial records. Daeon Industries isn't working alone. They've been receiving funding from Valith sources too. What? Hannah leaned in, studying the data. These accounts. Some of these are connected to members of the royal court. Someone is playing both sides, Tae-sun said, understanding dawning. They want to restart the war. War is profitable, Dae-hyun agreed. For weapons manufacturers, shipping companies, security contractors, on both sides. Peace is bad for business. Hannah's face had gone pale. General Coulter. He's been pushing for military expansion since the peace was signed. If he's involved, an explosion rocked the command center. Alarms blared as smoke filled the air. Through the chaos, Tae-sun heard gunfire. They're here, Dae-hyun said grimly, drawing his weapon. They're attacking the palace. Hannah grabbed Tae-sung's arm. We need to get to the station. If we can find proof of who really attacked it, we can stop this before it becomes a war. The palace is under attack, Tae-sun protested. You need to stay here. The palace has guards. The truth has us. Hana was already moving toward a side exit. Are you coming or not? They ran through service corridors as the sounds of battle echoed behind them. Dae-hyun led the way, his military training guiding them away from the main fighting. They burst out into a maintenance hangar where Valith ships sat in neat rows. Can you fly one of these? Tae-sun asked. Hannah smiled grimly. I'm a military commander. Of course I can fly. She climbed into a small scout ship and started the engines. Get in. Tae-sun and Dae-hyun scrambled aboard. The ship lifted off just as armed figures entered the hangar, firing at them. Energy blasts scorched the hull but missed the engines. Hannah piloted the ship through the hangar entrance and up into the atmosphere. Where are we going? Dae-hyun asked. Kepler-9? Hannah said. If there's evidence of who really attacked the station, it'll be there, if they're still there waiting. Tae-sun asked. Then we fight. Hannah's hands were steady on the controls. Together. Like we did during the war, the ship broke through the atmosphere and jumped to faster than light travel. Behind them, the capital was burning. Ahead, the truth waited at a silent research station. And somewhere in the dark, enemies from both their species worked to destroy everything they had built. Tae-sung looked at Hannah, remembering the war, remembering why they had fought so hard for peace. Whatever waited for them at Kepler-9, they would face it together, just like old times. Except this time, the enemy wasn't each other. It was the people who wanted them to hate each other. And that made this fight even more important. The research station hung in space like a broken tooth. Half its modules were dark, venting atmosphere into the void. Scorch marks blackened the hull where weapons had fired. Hannah brought the scout ship in slowly, watching for threats. Psst. No sign of other vessels, Dae-hyun reported from the scanner station. Whatever happened here, they're gone. are waiting inside, Taesoon said grimly. They docked at an emergency airlock that still had power. The station's gravity was functioning, but the air smelled wrong, like burnt plastic and fear. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Stay alert, Hannah said, drawing a weapon from the ship's armory. She tossed one to Taesung, who caught it instinctively. The data core should be in the central module. If we can access it, a sound echoed through the corridor. Footsteps. Heavy and multiple. Hannah raised her weapon just as figures emerged from the darkness. They wore combat armor with no identifying marks, but Taesung recognized military movements when he saw them. Drop your weapons, one of them ordered. The voice was human, male, and cold. Hannah and Taesung exchanged glances. They were outnumbered 5-3 in unfamiliar territory. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. The lead soldier stepped forward and removed his helmet. Taesung recognized him immediately. It was one of Yunho's corporate security officers, a man called Jinwoo, who had a reputation for brutality. Well, Jinwoo said with a smile, this is convenient. The princess and the diplomat delivered right to us. Yunho will be pleased. You're working for Daeon Industries, Taesoon said. You attacked the station. We liberated it from the delusion of peace, Jinwoo corrected. This station represented everything wrong with the treaty. Humans and Valith working together like equals. It was offensive. You killed 47 people, Hannah said, her voice shaking with rage. Casualties of war, Jinwoo shrugged. War that should never have ended. Yonho and General Koltar understand that. There's profit in conflict, power in division. Your little peace experiment was bad for business. So Taesoon had been right. Koltar and Yunho working together, playing both sides against each other. It was almost brilliant in its cruelty. You won't get away with this, Daehyun said. We already have. The palace is under attack by human extremists. The station was destroyed by Valith hardliners. By the time anyone sorts out the truth, both our governments will be back at war. Ginwoo gestured to his soldiers. Take them to the secondary airlock. We'll space them and leave the bodies as evidence. The soldiers moved forward. Taesung prepared to fight, knowing it was hopeless, but refusing to go quietly. But before they could reach him, Hannah moved. She was faster than any human could be. Valith genetics and training combining into fluid motion. Her weapon appeared in her hand as if by magic, firing twice. 2 soldiers dropped before the others could react. Taesung grabbed his own weapon and rolled, coming up firing. Daehyun did the same. The corridor became chaos. Energy blasts scorched the walls. Ginwoo dove for cover, screaming orders. One of his soldiers got off a shot that caught Daehyun in the shoulder, spinning him around. Hannah put that soldier down with a single shot to the chest. Then it was just Jinwoo, pressed against the wall with his weapon raised. Hannah had her gun pointed at his head. Taesoon covered her while checking on Daehyun. I'm fine, Daehyun grunted. Flesh wound. Hurts like hell, though. Drop it, Hannah ordered Jin-Woo. Instead. Jinwoo laughed. You think killing me stops anything? The plan is already in motion. By now, both governments are convinced the other side attacked. They are probably mobilizing fleets as we speak, and we'll show them the truth, Taesung said. The data core will have evidence of what really happened here. Good luck with that. Jinwoo's smile was ugly. We wiped it. No evidence, no proof. Just your word against the whole conspiracy. Taesung felt his hope crumble. If they had no proof, if it was just their testimony, would anyone believe them? Governments wanted simple answers, clear enemies. The truth was messy and complicated. There's always evidence, Hannah said quietly. People like you always miss something. She was right. Taesoon remembered his military training, the basics they drilled into every soldier. The black box, he said suddenly. Research stations have emergency recorders, separate from the main data core. For exactly this kind of situation, Jinwoo's smile faltered. That was all the confirmation Taesoon needed. Where is it? Hannah pressed the gun harder against Jinwoo's head. You'll never find it in time, Jinwoo spat. And even if you do, You'll never make it back to stop the war. Tell us where it is, or I'll space you right here, Hannah said, and her voice held no doubt. She would do it. Jin-Woo stared at her for a long moment, then pointed down the corridor. Maintenance section C, behind the coolant tanks. But it won't matter. You're too late. Tied Ginwoo up and found the black box exactly where he said. The device was small, heavily shielded, and contained a complete record of everything that happened on the station, including the moment Jinwoo's team had entered through a breached airlock and systematically murdered the staff. This is it, Daehan said, clutching his wounded shoulder. This proves everything. The conspiracy, the murders, all of it. Now we just need to get it to someone who can stop the war, Taesung said. The diplomatic station, Hannah said. Nexus 7, it's neutral ground. If we broadcast this from there, both governments will have to acknowledge it. Jinwoo shouted threats and promises that they would fail. Hannah ignored him, already plotting their jump coordinates. The ship launched just as more vessels appeared on the scanner. It's probably reinforcements coming to ensure the conspiracy stayed hidden. The jump to Nexus 7 took 2 hours. 2 hours while the galaxy burned? They could only monitor the news feeds and watch as both governments blamed each other as fleets mobilized. As the fragile peace they had fought for crumbled, Ambassador Giwoo appeared on the emergency channel, her face haggard. Taeson, where are you? The situation is deteriorating rapidly. We need you back here. I'm bringing proof, Taesung said. Proof that neither side attacked. That we're being manipulated by who? Our own people. Both sides. War profiteers who want the conflict to restart. Giwoo's expression shifted through disbelief to horror. If that's true, we need to move fast. The fleet commanders are pushing for immediate action. Stall them. We're almost at Nexus 7. They arrived to find the station in chaos. Ships from dozens of species crowded the docks, all trying to leave before the war started. Taesung, Hannah, and Daehan fought their way to the main assembly hall, where emergency sessions were being held. General Koltar was there, demanding immediate military response to human aggression. Ambassador Jiwoo stood on the opposite side, accusing the Valith of orchestrating the attack. The assembly was dissolving into shouting matches and threats. Enough. Hannah's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She strode into the center of the hall, still in her combat gear, blood on her uniform. Taesung walked beside her, holding the black box. You want to know who attacked the research station? Taesung said, We do. Because we were just there. We fought them. And we have proof. He uploaded the black box data to the main display. The footage played for everyone to see. Jinwoo's team entering the station, the systematic murders. The conversations where they explicitly named Yunho and Koltar as their employers. The hall fell silent. General Koltar's face went pale. This is a fabrication. The black box data is authenticated, a neutral observer announced. It cannot be faked. This is genuine. Someone in the human delegation stood up. It was a representative from Daeon Industries, already moving toward the exit. Security grabbed him before he made it to the door. Both sides have been played, Hannah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. War profiteers from our own governments tried to restart the conflict. They murdered 47 innocent people, and they almost succeeded in destroying the peace. Why? Someone called out. Why would they do this? Taesun stepped forward. Because peace is bad for business. Because some people profit from conflict. Because they counted on us to hate each other more than we loved the truth. He looked around the hall, at all the species represented there, all the different faces and forms. You want to know why humanity deserves to be here? Not because we're peaceful or wise or superior, but because we learn. Because when we fall, we get back up. And because sometimes we're too stubborn to let the bastards win. The hall erupted in noise, but it was different now. Not anger at each other, but anger at the conspiracy. Security forces moved to arrest General Koltar, who tried to run but was caught. The Daeon Industries representatives were being detained by human authorities. Ambassador Jiwoo approached Taesun and Hannah. You saved us, she said simply. Both of you. We saved ourselves, Hannah corrected. by refusing to accept the easy answer, by doing the hard work of finding the truth. Over the next few hours, the situation calmed. The fleet stood down. Investigations began on both sides, rooting out the conspiracy. Young Ho was arrested on Earth. More names emerged. More people who had profited from the war and wanted it back. But the peace held. 3 months later, Taesung stood in a new facility, watching as the first class of Joint Human Valeth military trainees began their exercises. A new initiative born from the crisis. Train together, fight together, ensure that both species understood each other well enough that conspiracies would fail. Hannah stood beside him, no longer as a princess, but as the joint commander of the program. She had given up her royal privileges to take the position, declaring that the future mattered more than titles. "Think it'll work?" she asked. "We'll make it work," Taesung said. "The hard way, because that's the only way we know it's real." A young human cadet approached, saluting nervously. "Sir, I have a question. Why do we train separately first, then together? Wouldn't it be more efficient to integrate from the start?" Taesung smiled. "Because efficiency isn't the goal. Understanding is. You need to know who you are before you can truly work with someone different. Otherwise, you lose yourself." The cadet nodded and returned to his unit. Hannah laughed softly. "Still so stubborn," she said. "Always," Taesung agreed. "That's how we survive. That's how we earn our place among the stars." Hannah took his hand, a gesture that would have been impossible 5 years ago. Difficult 3 months ago, but felt natural now. "You know, I finally understand why you stayed away. And why you came back. You stayed away because humanity needed to find its strength. You came back because you realized strength includes knowing when to accept partnership." She looked up at him. "You're still the most infuriating human I've ever met. You're still the most terrifying princess in the galaxy." They stood together, watching the cadets train, watching the future take shape. It would not be easy. There would be more conspiracies, more people who wanted war. But there would also be this, humans and Valeth, working side by side, building something that neither could create alone. In the end, that was the answer to Hannah's question. He had stayed away because humanity needed to stand on its own. But he had come back because standing alone was not the same as standing together. And in a galaxy full of ancient empires and elder races, proving you could do both was the only way to truly earn your place among the stars.